What's up? I'm Ayla.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann.
And this is Let's Talk BL, a Boys Love podcast.
It is Sunday, Series Sunday, that day of the week where we talk all about one series and one series only, chock full of spoilers. So if you have not watched the series, listen to our expert opinion, be spoiled, and then go watch the show.
Yeah.
Make your own opinions.
I feel like this is an interesting show to be like, you should watch the show because, like, on one hand, yes, you should watch the show.
Yeah.
On the other hand, oh my God, spare yourself. Like, the trauma.
I feel like we're so far apart. This is so weird.
Yes, so we've changed our setup, as you may or may not have noticed. What do you think? If you're watching this, not listening.
If you're watching this, I feel like we should audio describe this because we're so bad at that, because this is a podcast first and foremost, even though we're professional vloggers now and travel.
Apparently.
Whatever.
Let me tell you,
when there's not cute boys on the show, we understand that you listen to this.
Yeah, we get it.
So we're sitting on a couch and we're drinking house wine out of a can because it has a cute little house on it, because the show is all about a house. There's so much about this house. Right. Also, it is limited edition Pride, so it's rainbow.
And it's wine, which makes perfect sense if you've seen this show.
Truly. Because we're talking 180 degrees passes through us.
Is it 180 degrees passes through us? Is it 180 degrees longitude passes through us?
No, it's 180 degrees passes through us.
Fascinating. Because
truly the longest.
I feel like there are a million. I'm going to pull this up right now because, like,
my drama list does say 180 degree longitude passes through us.
So I pulled this up a bunch of times because I was trying to look up Pond, who's the lead actor in this. And I kept trying to figure out, I was like, okay, what exactly is this show called? Because I have seen it in so many different variations. And so, like, there are so many different ways. So, like, if you're just a fan, most fans just call the show 180 degrees.
Yes.
But yes, the official IMDb, which I feel like is pretty accurate and official, and because IMDb matches my drama list, which matches something called BL Watcher, which I've never seen before. Let me know if that's a legit site. And Gaga Ooh La La, the official platform it's on, is 180 degree longitude passes through us.
Okay. Official.
Lord
of mercy, that's the longest title ever.
I
wonder what the Thai title
so many
is.
Different ways.
I'd be so curious to know. I should copy and paste it, because, like, my drama list will have the Thai title. Yeah. And then we sometimes will throw it into, which is why we got Junmai Kotang Fa.
You Are My Sky.
The destination is the sky.
Yes. And newly we have Mengkorn Gin Yai, Big Dragon the series.
Okay, I'm really curious now because the 180 degrees is, like, in the middle of the native title.
Interesting.
So we're about to find out.
I wonder if in Thai do you say longitude 180 instead of 180 longitude, which is how you would say it in English?
No, here's how they titled it in Thai. A line of 180 degrees of longitude passes us.
Oh, and that makes sense because lines are so prominent in the show.
Oh my gosh.
And they discuss lines, but we'll get into all of that. Yes. Tell us the nuts and the bolts.
Okay. It's only 8 episodes, but the longest 8 episodes.
Oh my God.
In your entire life.
The journey I had with these eight episodes. And I watched this literally all in one day.
Yeah. It's intense.
I have not yet recovered.
It's on Gaga Ooh La La, which we love.
Shout out Gaga Ooh La La.
And fun fact about the director is they have only done plays, and they're an associate theater professor at good old Bangkok University.
Which is so funny because I was watching this and I made the specific comment to you where I said, this feels like I'm watching a university play.
Yeah.
I said, this feels like I'm watching a university stage play. Like, we have the text message to show that I said this. And so, like, hearing this is wild.
I know.
This shows you that I truly did graduate from the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, because my undergrad, there was, like, a requirement for everyone who graduated from class, which was the, like, abbreviation, regardless of your major, you had to watch the semester's stage play. Like, it was like a part of your grade.
I think that's important. Support the arts.
Yeah,
we do.
So much art. Yes.
Okay, it stars Into What, played by Nike. Nike. How do they pronounce his name? Nike?
Honestly,
Nike?
I watched Starstruck Media Lila, who we love. Shout out Lila. Her interview with them. And I want to say they pronounce it Nike because I watched that. Yeah.
Okay, Nike. And then we have Wang, played by Pond. Lord have mercy.
I mean, the
Shout
talent.
Shout out. Our wardrobe today is in honor of the deep V's.
In honor of that collarbone that will not quit, people.
Holy moly.
Oh my God.
That's aggressive. And then Mon, played by Ma'am? M-A-M.
Mom. Do we think this is a God situation or a Tad situation?
I don't know. She's Irish, so because her last name's McIntosh. So who even knows?
Mom. Who knows?
Ma'am. Okay. You got a nice little synopsis here.
It is synopsis time. Sassy Wimon is an extremely successful director. She has a close, friend-like relationship with her teenage son, Wang.
Weird.
What will she do when Wang experiences his first love with Intuit, her old friend? Love, relationships, understanding, mother and son learning from each other in this era of changeability. A friendship will forever be altered.
True. I like it.
Factual.
I feel like that works.
I feel like let's start with the obvious, which is this mother and son relationship. Okay, I guess let's start with the journey that this show takes you on. I was watching the show and fully the first 3 episodes, I was like, I hate this show. I was like, I don't know if I can get through this. I don't know if I can do this. I hate this show.
Well, and from what I saw on social media, I really wanted to watch this show. I like shows like this. We both like shows like this where they're like heavily plot. You know, it actually reminds me a lot of Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
I loved that movie. I read that book / listened to the audiobook because I don't read books. And so I felt like that it was a lot of that where like it's deep, you can think, like there's not, but I didn't actually know a lot of the storyline of like what it was or what it entailed.
Right.
I just knew that it was heavy.
I did not know the storyline at all. I remember everyone's reactions. And I was like, okay, this one's going to be intense, but I didn't know the ins and outs of it.
Right.
And so the first 3 episodes, because I started it before you, and I was texting you, I was like, I hate this show. I was like, I don't know if I can
play
do
by
this.
play.
I was like, I hate the show. And you were in the other room because I was ahead of you by the time you came home and started watching it. And I feel like you could probably hear me just like yelling.
I did hear you yell once and I was like, oh my God, what is going to happen in this show?
Because I was getting so just mad that I had to watch it. And here's why. It was the relationship. So I have a really, really hard time with In and Wang. I really do. Like, I went into this being like, because, and you pointed this out, Wang looks like he's gonna devour him the minute he sees him. And I was like, I have a problem with this. I was like, this is so problematic in such a big way.
Which is again what you get in Call Me by Your Name if you read the book, because in the movie you can't get that idea from, oh gosh, of course I don't remember those characters' name, but Timothée Chalamet's character in the book really wants Armie Hammer's character. Like,
I feel like you get that in the movie, but I think that but
not as much, because the book is told from
his point of view,
Timothée Chalamet's character's point of view, and you hear it even more so.
And so, like, I guess my main problem with it really came from the fact that, like, honestly, I'll be honest, I went into this with a prejudice. I was like, this is a BL, they're gonna end up together. And I didn't want that to happen. Like, I was actively upset just about the thought of them actually ending up together.
I did know that they weren't going to end up together. So I almost was like, oh, you're going to be happy. But I, like, didn't want to spoil it for you.
And it's funny because I want to say it was, like, really episode 5 when I was like, okay, like I was like, I think I see where this is going. And really when In starts telling the stories about Siam,
right,
I was like, that's when I really this show is just so plot heavy. And even with the monologuing, it was done so well. It was like they were painting a picture. So I love reading.
I was never bored.
I love reading books. And one of the reasons that I love reading books so much is, like, you get to paint this picture without seeing it. And so you really are, I just think there's something very special about that. Like, I have a degree in publishing because I love the world of books and reading so much. And that's what I felt like was happening when he was telling these stories. I was like, this is very cool because he's telling these stories and I'm so vividly picturing them. But then you have the added layer of like Wang and his reactions because he's hearing about his dad in a way that he's never been told about his father before. And you've already been primed to know that like he's got a lot of issues going into it with his dad. And so
and with his mom.
But like especially with his dad, right? Because his whole sort of like personality in life is
him searching for who his dad was.
Right. Yeah. And is like very much built around this game that he used to play with his dad as a kid, right? His whole life, his whole personality. And so like all of that together, I was like, this is done really well. And this is so interesting and so intense. And the way that they use the rain, I just thought it was great. So my journey with it started out with like, I hated it because I was like, because
you had preconceived notions about what was going to happen.
Like even me as a BL fan where I get annoyed with people going into BLs with preconceived notions. Like I'll be honest, I went into this with a preconceived notion and I was pissed about it at first. And then by the end of this show, I was like, this was incredible. Yeah. I was like, every single thing that they did with every single character was exactly right.
Because I'm processing things still to this day. Like I finished it last night. And so I've still had all day and I like will have moments where I'm thinking through what happened in the show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this happened. And like, what do I think about that? And how do I process that? And like, yeah, because it is very plot heavy, but not in a way that's burdensome. Like there's so much to see and there's so much to think about and there's so much to hear that you're like, and there's so much not said, which I kind of love. It's not wordy.
There's a lot of also like perception. It's like a lot of the viewer is inserted into this because you and I had this conversation earlier about there's a part where In is talking about he said this word and you were like you were telling me you were trying to figure out what could that word be and I was like I knew immediately, but that's like me going into it with my perception of things. Right. And so like
I was like, oh yeah, the obvious one is it could be love, but maybe it's like, or maybe it's gay, or maybe like there's.
But I feel like you went into it kind of like how Wang would see things, right? And so I think that like it's very interesting the way they did that because it really inserts the viewer into the show. Because I very immediately took because Wang's reply to that, or because the way that In explained it is he said it took on a different meaning with the way it was said this time. And so I was like, well, there's so many different ways to love a person because this whole time he's building up and talking about how, and he says this line and I like jokingly said to you, like, this is how I feel about a BL boy whose name will not be spoken on this episode. Mark my words. Jokingly. And so, but the line he said was, it wasn't love, it was worship. And so like he's told all the way up until this point, he's told this story with different forms of love. Right. And so I was like, okay, it's very clear to me that the word here is love, but like, that's me as a viewer picking up on things like that as somebody that enjoys words and enjoys wordplay and enjoys, right, like the building of that. And so, like, it is very heavily built on you as a viewer, too, and your perception, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. So going back to the beginning where we talk about the dynamic between the mom and son, I feel like this is very stereotypical of any depiction of a single parent, specifically a single mother with any child. Right? Yeah. It's this weird codependent, we're best friends kind of dynamic. You see it in Gilmore Girls, which I absolutely love Gilmore Girls.
I love Gilmore Girls.
You see it across a lot of media where it's a lot of basically we're best friends wherever the other parent disappeared, however they disappeared. And so then to kind of process that relationship through adulthood, especially when one person's making choices the other one doesn't agree with, is complicated because this mother-son dynamic works in so much as they haven't physically been around each other. And now that they are, and now because we learn,
I mean, they have though, right? Because he says, I grew up at boarding school, but every single weekend I was home with my mom.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In the very first episode, he says he's talking about how he grew up at boarding school, and then he says, "But her weekends belong to me," because he's describing his mom. He's like, "She's this great director. She has this huge big life. She's very celebrated. And I was at boarding school, but every weekend she belonged to me."
Right, but as they reiterated multiple times, her life was very separate from his, as well as hers, as well as his, and so like she doesn't share with him. He knows, but she doesn't share with him all of the boys that she's dating.
Right.
And he doesn't share with her any type of relationship he had. And she very much is like, he doesn't want to be a part of my entertainment world. And like, he's very like their actual lives and who they actually are very separate from each other. And so I think this show finally develops them as actual people to each other instead of like ideas about who each other are and trying to avoid actually talking about meaningful things to each other, because like this apparently is the first time they've ever had any type of meaningful conversation about the dad.
Right. Well, because Wang does say repeatedly that he's only heard the stories that his mom has told him and that his dad's family have told him.
Right.
And so like she has told stories about his dad, but like I actually do kind of understand that from her point of view, in so much as like she had a very interesting relationship with his dad, in so much that like she pursued Sam. She made her friend help her get with Sam. And her personality is very domineering and very much like she sees what she wants, she gets what she wants, which like I respect that in a way. I really do.
Yeah.
And like but then this life that she had planned and figured out, it turns out their relationship was not right because Sam was gay.
Right.
Or Siam was in love with someone else. Right. We actually don't know that he was what his sexuality was. Right. We just know he was in love with someone else. Yes. And anytime that someone leaves you because they are in love with someone else, but particularly as someone who has had relationships with people who then were later gay, like it is a very interesting feeling. To like, it's just an interesting thing to process, because you never... The idea of being in a romantic relationship with someone whose sexuality maybe is not like you are not their preference, it can be very confusing. And so it does make things really confusing, and really, because of course anytime you break up with anyone, period, full stop, for whatever reason, there's like anger and hurt and whatever, and so there's an additional layer on top of that when it happens because of this like sexuality issue. Because honestly, at least in my experience, like, you know, it's not about that logically, but of course love and relationships are not logical, and so you feel like you've been lied to, right? You feel like you were played, you feel like you were used as a pawn to like help them figure something out, and for you it was not about that. And so there's like an additional layer to it that's really confusing, and like you feel bad because you know you shouldn't be mad about it, but like
but you're angry because you're part of it.
But you're angry because your heart's been broken. And it's like there's a lot. So she clearly had a very complicated relationship with Sam. We also know that she's a homophobe, full stop, and she admits it. And she's like, I actually don't care that I'm a homophobe.
Because as far as we know, Sam never told her, or maybe that last conversation was when he told her.
That's the impression I got. But again, so much of the show is like unsaid. You as a viewer we
have to assume.
Right.
Because then we know at some point Siam did tell In that he loved him.
Yes.
But that was after they got divorced.
Well, and what you find out, what's fascinating about God, this show's so fascinating and I love it so much, is that you see this and you get the perception from 3 different point of views, which is like so cool. Because because In is telling the story all the way through, and then we have our finale episode when when In and Wang get in a fight about it, and Wang is like, you know what he was doing. He called you every night to tell you he loved you. That's the part you left out. He's like, and I know that you left that out. He's like, because I understand. And In essentially like admits to that like, yeah, you're right. And so like this clearly is something that was an unspoken secret.
Yeah. Because the complicated thing about going back to what you were saying about the mom who sees what she wants and goes after it and gets it, is the complicated thing about that is that you're not considering what the other person wants,
right,
or what the other person thinks or feels. You're like, no, I want you. And if you unfortunately find someone who's a pushover or who's weaker or who like doesn't know how to speak their mind and stand their ground, because yes, so often if you have a very bold dominating personality, you're going to bulldoze people. But the problem with that is that you're not bulldozing people on purpose. Like, you are who you are,
right,
and the other person also has the free will to be like, no,
to set boundaries,
right, to speak up for themselves. And it's not my responsibility to guess or think what you feel and what you do. Like, sure, it's my responsibility to ask you, but that doesn't always come naturally and easily to people. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. And the same thing of a character like In, who's very passive, who is like, if I just disappear, like, it'll be fine. And so you have all these different personalities of where you have a dominating personality who doesn't consider anyone's feelings, and then you have another person who considers everyone's feelings.
Right.
You have these two extremes, and they had the same person in the middle, and that same person in the middle was trapped because they loved
Wang is a little bit of both, honestly, because
Yeah.
Wang is very much like a black and white kind of person.
Yeah.
He actually does have a lot of his mom in him.
Mhm.
And like, what's interesting and I think confusing, especially for that personality type, is that it's such a good quality when it comes to things like career or education.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you see what you want and you get it because like that's the only like there is no other end game than to get the thing. Right? So like in situations like education and career and things like that, it's actually an excellent trait to have. In interpersonal relationships, it makes it difficult for you
because you literally can't read the room. Because I'm sure at some point, if from the outside perspective looking at these three people interacting, I'm sure at some point people are like, oh, I see what's happening here.
Right.
Like, clearly, like, these two guys were very, very close, and then she comes in and is like, I pick you.
Oh, literally in the very beginning, the opening episode, when Wang is looking at the pictures and you see the pictures, like, you should go back and look at the picture. I think everybody should.
I did. Yeah.
Because it's so obvious.
You see them so many times. They're
like,
so intimate.
I was like, this is so clear to me what's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also interesting because I really want to know, and we'll never know, at what point I have so many questions. At what point did Siam figure out his feelings for In? At what point did In figure out his feelings for Siam? Because he potentially
In never admits that he had feelings.
He never
Siam,
did.
I will say.
So maybe, like, yeah, okay, so maybe that's the question, is like, what are the feelings?
Because In is so passive. He's so like, I will do the thing that makes you happy.
And here's why Wang is such a good character, a good counterpoint to In, because Wang is like, when they're having that final confrontation, he's like, you didn't say you didn't have feelings for me.
Right.
Like, he was a character who figured out a way to help In express his thoughts and feelings, right? Because In finally like tells these stories, and like in so much that he can, right? Like, he gets Wang actually brings out things in that nobody else clearly has. Like, he gets him to cross the bridge, he gets him to go to the other side, he gets him to do all these things.
Yeah.
And so we do see that, like, my assumption is that In is gay or is attracted to men, because Wang is like, you didn't say that you weren't attracted, and clearly you disappeared because you were terrified of what this meant for like the two of you.
See, I didn't get that. What I got is that he disappeared because he thought that if he was out of Sayam's life, Sayam would forget about him, right? That Sayam would move on. That it wasn't necessarily about
he was
him.
like, I wanted your family to stay together.
Right. That it wasn't about that he had feelings for Sayam. It's that he thought, well, maybe if Sayam is telling me he's in love with me, if I go away, then this will stop for Sayam, right? I think is what, like, at least that's what I got from it. But again, this show is so much perception. Like, there's no way to know who's right and who's wrong. And
which is why In and Mon are two sides of the same coin, because they're both making decisions for another person based on themselves. Yeah. And it's fascinating.
Well, you know what's so interesting? And like, I feel like this is implied, but they never, like, nobody ever directly states it. So very much, so often in Western media, at least, you get a lot of like, oh my God, you look exactly like your dad. You're a carbon copy. When I look at you, I see your dad. That's never said in 180 Degrees, but the pictures, if you look at them,
we know
the pictures are actually, like, those are real pictures that they took, and that's actually Pond in the pictures with him. And like, of course, in the flashback, it's Pond, the actor, right? So we know he looks, and again, the last time, we know it's been set up that, like, the last time that In ever saw Pond was as a baby, which is another reason that I have a huge problem with this whole situation. And when he sees him, when he shows up at that bridge, right, to be like, my car's messed up, he's like taken aback, because you can clearly see he's like,
my dead friend.
It's as though he's seen someone come back from the grave, right? And so, like, this entire plot is based on misplaced feelings, because again, In is very clear about, like, I wouldn't say that I loved your dad. I wouldn't say I was in love with your dad. I worshiped, I idolized your dad. Your dad was right. Like, because he says this over and over again. He's like, this worship. Yeah. Right. He always very much, it's like, this
he was
idol.
His knight in shining armor because of how they met in the first place, right? Like, he tells that elaborate story about how he, like, saved his bag out of the pond.
Well, no, he didn't save his bag. Everything was destroyed, but then he gave him the new books.
Well, he saved the bag, and then he was able to give him the book. So, like, I feel like, he was a hero. Like, he
right.
Like,
I would describe it more as like a hero, because knight in shining armor implies romance, right? Because who is the knight in shining armor? He's getting the princess, right? Like, knight in shining armor implies romance, and I don't think that's a safe jump to make, quite frankly, on In's part. I think that, like, that's what makes the show so interesting and confusing, and, like, so much to think about, is especially at the end, the finale, when he's like, when Wang is like, I'm leaving, I understand, blah blah blah, and he's like, if you can't say it, hug me, and, like, give me all of your feelings with a hug. And I feel like the thing about that is that we're supposed to see that and think, or at least Wang thinks, this proves he loves me back. This proves he has feelings for me too. I think that we have seen for the entire 8 episodes leading up to this, that In just wants to make people feel better, right? He does this with the mom. He does this with, like, he does.
He's insistent that Wang apologizes to Mon, because he knows that that'll make it better.
Well, but not only that, whenever they are, when Mon and In are waiting for Wang to come back when he's driven off, and they're, like, fighting, he's very much a, like, I'm sorry, I'll do what you want, and he hugs her even though, like, he doesn't want it, right? Like, he does the thing that you tell him to do, right? And so in that moment, Wang made it very clear to him that, like, this imaginary love, that, because quite frankly, Wang has invented this love. This is not a real love. This is imagined, misplaced feelings. He's like, this will make him feel better, and he's leaving, and why do I not do this for him? And so I just don't know. I don't know that it's a fair assumption to make that, like, he is gay, that he does have feelings for Wang, that he does have feelings for Sayam. I think that, honestly, if he does have feelings for Wang, I think that makes his character the worst, the Earth's worst, truly.
Yeah, I definitely think that he probably does have some type of, because the emotion and the intimacy of that week, or those couple of days that they spent together, not even a week, that, like, there was some development there, but that would have never happened because In doesn't know who he is. Like, the lack of talking about, like, because he always refers to himself as that whale, like that whale metaphor that he uses throughout the entire show. like, he's like, I'm a solitary person. I am one person. I want to be alone. Like, I don't want to be found, basically.
Yeah.
And he's isolated himself. And so I think that he almost can't love anyone because he doesn't know who he is, and it's shown beautifully through the set design, because you have that partition in the middle of the room that they talk through so much, the bars where you're like, he's behind, it's not a wall because you can still see through it and you can still communicate through it, and there's still glimpses of who each other is, but you can't physically reach to that other person. Like, you can't fully see a completed person on the other side. And so I thought that was beautifully done, just the way that they were like, these two men, for all intents and purposes, are in a room together, and it should be intimate and it should be romantic and it should be, but they situated it in such a way that, like, at no point did I ever want to see these characters,
I was gonna say, here's
intimately
the thing,
together.
It actually shouldn't be intimate. And I think that that's why I want to believe as a viewer. And I think that's the beauty of this show is, as a viewer, everyone kind of gets to decide, which is very interesting because that's a very common thing in stage plays, especially the way that they're adapted in university, which is why it's so funny to me that I clocked this as a university stage play from like Ep 1. True. And then it turns out that like that's what this director is known for. Is that like you're supposed to walk away from it and 5 people can have 5 different opinions about what happened and no one's wrong. That's the thing. Like, and that's supposed to be the beauty of this type of story, is that no one's wrong, right? There is no one right or wrong answer. It's that what you took away from this story is the right thing for you, right? Like, that's how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
And so what I took away from it as a viewer is that if he were to have actually had feelings for this kid because he watched this child be born, I think that would have been the worst, like the worst thing that could have happened. I think that would have made him a bad person. I think that also, like, it wouldn't have been true to his character as somebody who's solitary and it takes a long time, because he talks about how he didn't have any friends before Siam, right? So like, he's not a social person, right? He doesn't establish emotional relationships very quickly, and he's known this kid for 4 days. Right? So like, it actually wouldn't have made sense for him as a character, for me as a viewer, for him to actually have had feelings for Wang. And also, I think that when In talks about like his worship of Siam, he knows that it's wrong. And I don't think that as a character, he would have done anything that would have potentially wronged Siam.
Right. Yeah.
So like, I just don't think it makes sense for him as a character to actually have like real feelings for this kid. I think that a lot of his actions and things that he says and does, and I think the way that he does them for me as a viewer, and again, nobody's right or wrong in this, which is like the kind of cool thing about these kinds of stories, is that he is very much a person that placates other people. Totally. He just wants to do the thing that's going to make you happy in the moment, up to a point, right? To the point where like Wang leans in to kiss him and he's like, okay, whoa, like I can't actually let you do that.
Well, he was going to let him kiss him until the phone rang.
No, he pushed him away before the phone rang.
No, he pushed him away after he came back from the phone call.
Right, but that's what I mean is, but like, I don't think he was going to let him.
I wonder if he would have let him, because he's a character that placates others.
He does, but I think he, again, the way that he describes his relationship with Siam and with Man, quite frankly, is he wouldn't, that's a line he wouldn't cross for them. Right?
Yeah.
And so like, I just as a viewer take away from this is all of the things that he does and says towards Wang are very much like placate him, because if you think about that moment where Wang is like, I'm gonna leave, like, I love you, I have these feelings for you, but if this meant nothing to you, I'll just leave, right? And he's kind of throwing a little bit of a temper tantrum because he's 20 years old and he's a 20-year-old boy, and this is what 20-year-old boys do.
It's what 40-year-old boys do.
So like, he's kind of throwing a little bit of a temper tantrum, and he stops him, because I don't think I don't think he stops him because he's like doesn't want to lose this great love
Right.
of his life.
Yeah.
I think he stops him because he's made this promise to Mon he's going to take care of him.
Right.
Right? Like Mon leaves and Mon is like, take care of my son.
Right.
Right? And so like I think that's why that was the meaning behind that wrist grab, not romance. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, so going back to like what you were saying about how like you really related to certain parts of this story, I really related to Wang at the end, where I have had relationships with people who I know it wasn't right in the moment for us to be together. And so that moment where Wang is like, I know you can't give me what you want, but my feelings are very real and I very much love you. But here's the thing about love, and this is like I've thought a lot about love and like really processed like what love is. And for me personally, love is something that considers someone else's thoughts and feelings above our own. And that's really hard to do, especially in romantic love. And it's what Wang does, because in that moment where he's like, I love you, but I know that you can't love me back for whatever reason. Like it could be because like you're however old you are and I'm 20 years old, or you're my dad's ex love of his life and I'm his son, and like all
of the reasons that they should not be together. Yeah.
But he was like, I love you and time is on my side. And potentially, I remember walking away from a relationship being like, I love this person and I'm not going to wait for them because this circumstance doesn't, like, I'm not holding out hope for this, but like, just know that I love you. And that if you get to a place and I'm still single and you're still single down the road, potentially, who knows what will happen. And I think that's where Wang is at this point in his life, because he is young. He's a 20-year-old, like your first love, which is what the description says, is like the biggest thing.
It's like all encompassing,
right? Yeah. And so I think that moment is beautiful, because in that moment Wang has like a maturity moment where he's like, I love this person, but I know I cannot be with them, and I'm gonna do what is right for everyone here, which is I have to go back with my mom because that's what she needs in this moment. I have to leave Wang, or I have to leave In, but I know where he is, because they have that whole moment where Wang is like, I understood what my dad was thinking in that moment when he left after that conversation with Mon, because he was like, he didn't know where to find In, the love of his life. Like he didn't know where he was, like potentially he was grieving because he thought that like he was lost forever. And so like he had no centering to be like, I know this person is still out there. I think he was hopeless. I think Siam was hopeless in that moment. And that's when the accident happens. And that's when he like couldn't perceive that like there was anything left. Whereas Wang, he's so young and he has hope that like, even though he's not going to be in a relationship with this man still exists. And his first love still exists. And even if it's not like, even though In and like the complicated base around who In is, just like your first love is your first love, no matter who it is. Because honestly, like your feelings for other people are your feelings.
Right. We had a conversation about this recently where like you really couldn't get why I was like about this certain person that we both know. And I was like, and you were like, well, are you mad? Like you don't like it anymore? Like how do you still? And I was like, no, because like my experience and my feelings to that person are still valid, because like that's my experience and those are my memories. And just because that person doesn't reciprocate, just because that person doesn't think that like I'm special or that their time with me was special, it doesn't mean that my time with them wasn't special, because it's special to me.
Right. Yeah. And so I think in this moment, like Wang shows incredible maturity for like a 20-year-old boy, because he's like, I still love you. And you're allowed to love anyone.
Right.
You're not allowed to touch everyone. You're not allowed to be in relationship with everyone. And so I think that's the beautiful moment. The beautiful thing about the ending of this show and what feels so satisfying is that everyone is back in their rightful places.
Right. I was like, I went out of this and I was like, they did the exact right thing, because if these two had been together at all, I would have been like, this show is garbage. Like, I would have actually been so upset. It would have made no sense to me. It also would have been highly problematic.
Yeah.
But I think the ending, what I love the most about Wang's speech in the ending is when he says, if I stayed, I would win this fight, which I think is him acknowledging like how much of his mom, this villain, quote unquote, this villain in the story, right? Because if you're watching this, if someone's a villain, it's her.
Yeah.
He's acknowledging that like she is a part of him and that like he has those same traits, right? And so he says, if I were to say I would win this fight,
right,
which like is something that I just like I relate to so much, is because like I very much am one of those people where I'm like, if I want a thing, I can do that and I can make that happen. And again, it serves me very well in like career and education, and
but not
like
in relationship with people, because that's only considering your own thoughts and feelings.
Well, no, because the difference is when he says, if I were to say I would win this fight, but I'm not going to, because I realized if I win, someone loses, right? Yeah. And he's like, I don't lose because I get the thing I wanted. Right. And he's like, and you don't lose because I believe that you want me to, whether or not he's right. Right. But in his mind, he's like, I don't lose and you don't lose. But this other person that I do love, regardless of like her faults, I love her because that's his mother and it is what it is. He's like, she loses. And I love her enough to not let her lose right now.
Right.
And so like that I thought was like a very beautiful sentiment, because like yes, Mon is the villain. She is an admitted homophobe. Like, she's the worst. But she also very much is like, she is who she is. She talks too much. She grandstands. She performs. She's loud. She's domineering. And she very much is who she is. And one of the things that I appreciate about this is that they both love her anyways. They both, like, there's this part in the show, and I hate her for basically the whole show except for in this one part. What's fun about this or interesting about this is that, like, they humanize her so much. Yeah. It's like, if you just look at her at surface value, you're like, she's the worst. But, like, there's this part where she comes back to Chiang Mai from winning this award show, and she's basically performing to them, right? She's like telling them the story of all this stuff. She's basically performing at them, and it turns to them and you see them, and like, this is the most boring story of all time, right? It's so boring, but it means so much to her to tell this story. And instead of them interrupting her and being like, oh my God, we've heard this before, oh my God, we saw this on TV, or being like, you've told me this story already on the phone when we talked, or like, this is the third time you've said that, right? Like, blah blah blah. Instead of them like doing that, like, they're listening to her and they're watching her, and like, they have these looks on their faces where they're like, this is important to her, and she is like, it means something to her to tell us this story because she's sharing the story with us, right? Because that's the thing that's important to her, is she's like sharing the story with people that she loves. It's not that she wants the attention, or it's that she's excited about this story, that's this thing that's happened to her, and she wants to share it in this excited way with these people that she loves. And instead of being annoyed with her, like, they're both watching her and they're listening to her, and they like are engaged with her because they love her, not because they care about what she's talking about, but because they love her. And like, that's, I think, such a nice moment, and it really makes all three of these characters, like, it makes you care about their relationships with each other, because at surface level, the way that honestly all three of them treat each other, you could look at this and be like, I actually want all of them to never speak to each other ever again. Right? Yeah. But like, there are moments like that that make you care about their relationships with each other.
I found annoyance in all the characters, probably the least with Wang.
But honestly, Pon just kills this. I mean, like, oh truly. My God, the talent! Like, when he cries and when he laughs and when anything he like, I believe him. I think that was one of the comments I had about Pond, is he was just like,
so interesting to watch,
and he was so natural. Like, I felt like Wang was a real person with real feelings and real emotions. Versus,
I would love to see that workshop.
I'll be honest, In and Mon felt forced to me. It felt like those were two people acting like In and Mon. Versus Wang felt like this was really happening to Wang to me.
Yeah. I was highly annoyed. I was just annoyed with Mon. I didn't dislike her. I just like she talked so much about nonsense that like I just was so annoyed with her. But I was most frustrated with In, because In is the type of character that I'm a pretty self-confident person. I'm not super chatty and I don't need to be the loudest in the room, but I am who I am and I know who I am, and I don't feel the need to assert that on other people, and I also don't feel the need to take on other people's thoughts and feelings, in so much that like I don't have to win a fight, but you also aren't going to win the fight against me, if that makes sense. And so I'm not going to like concede to you. Whereas with In, it was so frustrating because like he never asserts himself, nor does he concede. He is just like a blank slate. Right. He is like what you said. He is whoever you need him to be in the moment. Yeah. And that is not a real person.
Well, and I think honestly, it does a disservice to people when you behave that way. Because
you can't be everything to all people.
Also, like one thing that I say a lot, just like professionally, is I'm people's boss. Like I'm the boss of people. Like I'm paid to be the boss of people, and like I have had to have multiple conversations with other team. So like I am the manager of managers who then have teams under them. So like I'm like the boss of a boss, basically. And I have had to have conversations a lot recently, actually, with people where I'm like, listen. Because there's this whole conversation about like, well, we can't say this and we can't be too blunt about that because like we don't want them to leave. We don't want them to leave. And I'm like, listen, you're doing this person, this team member a disservice because they're not going to understand what you mean because you're not willing to tell them directly, do XYZ. Right. And then you're going to turn on and get annoyed with them. And then we as management, we have no right to do that to them because you have never given them the opportunity to take that feedback and do something about it. Right. So like we can't then be annoyed if they don't improve, right? If they don't change their behavior, if we don't tell them, if we don't give them the chance to act upon that. Right. And so like I feel like you are doing people a disservice when you keep those kinds of things from them, because what you're basically telling them is like, I don't believe in you enough to believe that like basically you're a good person, that you're willing to take feedback and change and improve and like be a better friend, a better employee, a better whatever when you do those things. Like you are doing them a disservice, and you're saying like, I don't believe in you and I don't think you're a good person is essentially what it boils down to. And so that's frustrating to me about In, is I'm like, what you're saying is like, this person who's supposed to be your best friend, Mon, like you don't believe in her enough.
Well, I think it's ultimately reflective of who In is, because In has no idea who he is. Like you see it multiple times, right? Like you have no idea if he has accepted the fact that he was in love with Siam, because you don't know if he's in love with Siam.
Right. Like he doesn't even know if he's in love with Siam.
Right. Like he says he worshipped him, and also like you don't think he's in love with Mon, but you're not really sure. Like there's there's so many layers to it, because he's such a solitary person and he's so set on having no interpersonal relationships with people. Like he's okay with people being around, right? Because like there's that whole moment with the villagers where like he interacts with them and Mon's like, you can't let them on your property, who knows what would happen. And he's like, it's okay, like I trust them, like it's okay that they're around. And like he has that other villager who like lives on the property, or like
I think he's like a
house manager,
like a caretaker, right? So when you have big estates in America and in Europe, I think like typically they're called like caretakers,
right?
Yeah.
And so like he doesn't mind people being around, but like he can't be in relationship with them,
right?
And so I think that's the hardest part, is that like he doesn't know who he is. So when he's confronted with people who are asking him who he is, and like also projecting some type of feeling onto him of theirs, he like panics, because he's like, then that means I have to figure out who I am. And that adds a whole layer of complication, because if you're a solitary person, like your thoughts and feelings and actions don't affect others. But if you're in relationship with people and there's someone in love with you, all of a sudden, like, you really have to know who you are. Like, I think that's what I see. Like, I work with a lot of families and with a lot of married couples, and like time and time again, if you don't know who you are as a person, your relationship with another person is not going to work out, because you can't be in relationship with someone if you don't know who you are.
Well, and it also goes, so like he's one extreme. So like the other extreme is when people are like too codependent, which is what Wang and Mon are.
Yeah.
Where like you literally can't exist without the other person. Right. And that is just as bad. Like I get questioned a lot as a married person about like, because I go on like, my husband and I go on trips separately, right? Like we go on vacation separately pretty frequently.
You came to visit me for New Year's, and my parents were so concerned. They were like, what is her husband doing? And I was like, probably hanging out with his friends. Yeah. Like, we went to New York City for New Year's, and my parents were like, well, where's her husband? And I was like, I don't know. He's his own person.
We've been married. I've been married for a very long time at this point, over a decade, which is a crazy thing to think about. Yeah. I got married way too young. But
here's the question, and it's funny because you talk about this too with this, like, Wang was 20 and you were 20 when you got married, right?
I was, yeah.
And so it's funny to me because like you do harp on the number thing. Like, you're like, they're too young, and you just said you were too young to get married.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because like age is just a number, right? Like, I have a best friend who got married at 19 and she's still married 10 years later, I think. And so it's funny because like
I was engaged at 19. I was engaged before I was in my 20s.
And so for me, I'm like, age is just a number, because like if you know who you are, and you know that you have confidence in that other person, because honestly, it doesn't matter how old you are, because I know 40-year-olds have gotten married and then they'll divorce 5 years later.
But honestly, the problem I have with In and Wang,
there's so many problems,
right? But like the main problem with the age thing, right? Me harping on the age and being like he's 20 and blah blah blah, is because In literally saw him born, right? Like, this is established in the show. He talks about it, right? He talks about going to the hospital when he was born. Like, I actually have a real problem with like I do think that it is not okay if you have a relationship with someone when they are a baby, when they're an actual child.
But how do you feel about Jacob in Twilight?
Okay, the imprinting is different, you guys, because it's like a whole thing. Actually, I was never really team Jacob. Like, I thought that whole twist was actually pretty stupid, to be honest with you. Because like literally in Twilight, he explains, he's like, you know, that part of you that really wanted to be with me, that was her.
That was like funny.
Literally, that was just them solving the Jacob versus Edward part. Like, that was literally just Stephenie Meyer being like, okay, so how do I make sure this is never going to be a conflict in the future ever again? This is how.
Let's come up with
like
imprinting.
It actually was fully a cop out.
How many child brides now are like, but he imprinted on me?
Oh my god. No, truly.
Do you think In imprinted on Wang? Wang imprinted on In?
Yeah. No, the problem I have with it is that like I do think that like from like it's not okay to know someone and have a relationship with like a child and then be like, it's the same problem that people have with like the whole thing when like, for example, like celebrity, so like Billie Eilish or like I remember hearing that this happened a lot with Mary-Kate and Ashley. They're older than me, so it wasn't really like I didn't really understand it as much. That like people counted down until they were 18 and now it's okay for me to like be sexually attracted to them, right?
Like
that kind of thing. And you see it a little bit happen now with a certain BL boy that like we're not going to get into that because that Let's Talk BL is not the place for that.
Hard pass.
But so like I actually do have a big problem with that. I think that like that it's not okay because of the power dynamics at play there, because I think it's a problem. And so that's the issue. So like I was engaged at 19 to someone who was 20, right? So it's like a little bit different. Like in my perspective, it was a little bit different.
I think maybe in that regard, it's the focus on the age when you're hyper aware of it, right? Like if you were a 20-year-old who met a 40-year-old out in the wild, and had no prior relationship, potentially okay, whatever.
That actually doesn't bother me whatsoever.
It's
I don't think
the prior relationship, the like.
And it's the situation with the dad and the mom because I do think, and it is very heavily established to In that like a lot of this is daddy issues, and honestly, Wang admits that like this wasn't an accident. He didn't accidentally stumble across him, right? Like I thought it was a shortcut. Like okay, right? Like, and he fully admits to that. And also, I think that like he very immediately establishes to In that his whole personality is built around this game he used to play with his dad.
Yeah.
Right? And
also, like, when he's like hearing these stories and interacting with you, I didn't necessarily find my missing dad. I realized he was in me. In that moment when he says that, I'm like, bro, this is weird. This took a turn. Like, I don't know if you're trying to say this because like you truly believe like you found parts of yourself that like relate to your dad. Or if you're like, In, love me because my dad's inside me.
Love me like my dad. Love me like you loved my dad. I know, like that. Yeah, I was like, this is very clearly this boy has a lot of trauma attached to his dad and losing his dad and having a father figure and like his sexuality, and it's all very, I think, confusing to him. And for the first time, he's interacting as an adult with another adult in an adult way.
Because he also talks about the relationship he had with that boy at boarding school.
Yeah.
I do love that moment where the guy was like, have you been, I think he asked like, have you been in love before? Or who have you been in love with? Were they, you said you'd been in love with somebody. Were they your middle school or whatever? And he was like, no, I met them at boarding school. And truly the realization that In has in that moment where he's like, oh no, he gay. Yeah. Oh no, he left a boy. Like, was truly a hilarious moment because I imagine he went to an all boys boarding school. Yeah. Like I know there are co-ed boarding schools, but I feel like when you think of boarding schools, you think of like one gender.
I feel like particularly in Thailand, to be honest with you, right? Because like
potentially.
Yeah.
And so
just because like of the boarding schools that I know of that like other actors have gone to, I don't know. But like
it was just a funny moment where he's like describing that, and he talks about like the complicated relationship he had with that boy was very similar to the relationship that In and Siam had.
Well, I thought it was really interesting when In is describing Rosalind, his girlfriend.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting about that situation,
right? Because Wang didn't believe she existed.
Right. He kept pushing, like, you didn't, like, he was like, tell me more about her. What was her name? Because he keeps pulling this, what was her name again? What was her name again? What was her name again? Like, he's going to catch him in a lie.
Yeah.
And, like.
That was so funny.
I feel like there are two ways you could take this. Is the way that he explains Rosalind, and I don't know which one is the right one, to be honest with you, even for me as a viewer, is that, like, on one hand, the way that he's describing this girl in this relationship shows you that he was gay and was not actually invested in this relationship and didn't really want to date a girl, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the other way you could take it is that he's realized that Wang has feeling for him and that Wang is gay and that this is going to like really devastate Wang if he really goes into detail about this girl that he was in love with.
Right.
And so, like, he's purposely trying to be aloof about this girl so that he doesn't hurt Wang's feelings. I just think there are two very different ways that you could take what he's saying. And I don't know which is the right one.
Truly, the beauty of this show is that it can be interpreted 120 different ways.
Which is what makes it so reminiscent of a stage play.
So here's the big question, and this is what we should end on. Is this a BL?
When I finished this show, I was like, this wasn't a BL. Because, and I've said this before on the podcast.
It was a boy's love.
One boy loved a man. Yeah. A boy apostrophe S, not boy S apostrophe. Yeah. Because I've said before on the podcast that I think that all BL is queer media, but not all queer media is BL.
Right.
And so I think that this was queer media that was not BL. Because I've said before, all BL is queer media because it's queer, obviously. Yeah. Right? So all BL and GL is queer media, but not all BL and GL is queer media. Because that's just how I feel. I think there are so many different interpretations of what queer media is. I think that like I am not the authority on what queer media is. I think that there are other people that are far better versed to speak to that.
Right.
But
all BL is queer media.
Yes.
Not all queer media is BL.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Agreed.
I think this is queer media, not BL.
Interesting. I think we've had a conversation recently. I've seen conversations recently on social media about like, because here's the thing, and I realized this specifically after we went to Thailand, and just in learning about like the Thai language and how nuanced it is that BL is the English translation for Y series.
Yes, Y series.
From yaoi, which this originated from Japan.
Right.
And so when Thailand took it over, they translated it to Y series.
Yes.
And then when somebody translated it, I guess, to the West.
Yeah, I would be fascinated to know where that
calls
happened.
it BL, right?
There are some like actual professors of this that we should try and get on the podcast to talk about this, because I don't actually know truly like the etymology of this.
Yes, because here's the confusing part is that like we call it boys love and BL, but a lot of times boy is associated with like pre-adolescence or like adolescence, right. And most of the BLs that we're getting now are college university age and older.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the confusing part is that like I did see a conversation recently where a lot of people wanted to start calling it MLM.
Yeah.
Which in the West is confusing because we have multi-level marketing, which is what I associate MLM, because like I'm of the generation,
which is like basically a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, which I'm of the generation where like LuLaRoe,
oh my god,
and like Avon, and like all these
right. Is Avon
or
Avon's
Young Living
not a pyramid scheme?
No, 100%
is it? Oh,
Young Living
for sure.
Hopefully there are no Southern moms listening to this.
No tea, no shade, but if you're on that essential oils game.
Oh my god, I cannot. Anyways, this took a turn. But so MLM is what I think of. But like men love men. Is that what that stands for? And so
you have WLW.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's what's confusing is that we call it BL, but like boy is just like the gender that like it encompasses like the male gender.
You know what's fascinating about this, and maybe we should do like this would be a really interesting podcast episode, is so a friend of mine, very dear family friend, who I love very much, was asking me, he supported us when we went to Thailand, all this stuff. He was like asking me about the podcast. I'm telling him everything, and he's like, "That's so cool." And he's asking me all these questions. He's gay. He's married to a man.
Yeah.
He was like, I guess the reason I'm nervous about it is because it has the word boys in it, and he's an older man, so like he's a family friend, so he is like my parents' age. And he was telling me, he was like, because when I was a young man, the perception of gay men is that you were pedophiles, right. Is that you liked little boys. Right. And he was like, so I am very nervous about the words boys love because of that like prejudice that happened when I was a young man who like, I mean, his story, and he's very open about his story, and like I will not name him, but like he was married to a woman and he has a bunch of kids and a bunch of grandkids.
Right.
And then finally later in life came out, and he always knew, but like it wasn't the thing you did as a man in the South, right? Like back in the day. And so like now he's married to a man, very happy, their family is beautiful. He was like, because of this prejudice, I am very like, it makes me uncomfortable, that word, the word boys love.
Totally.
The words BL, because of that, for no other reason. He was like, the word boy in there is what makes me nervous about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's the interesting part. It's like, ultimately, it's lost in translation.
Lost in translation, yeah.
Because it ultimately just means like a gay story.
Right.
And so I would say that like
I think, you know what, I bet the reason, and I don't know, it would be very interesting to get one of these like doctors who very much specializes in this, because there are a few of them that I know of in the BL community.
Right.
To talk about this, because I don't actually know, but like my my sense is that potentially it got translated that way because most of these stories are very coming of age. It's very much like the discovery of your feelings for another man, or the discovery of your feelings for someone of the same gender. So like
the innocence is what they were trying to capture.
Innocence is what I think. Yeah.
Right, because when BL started, it was very much like a high school drama situation. It's like if we based all teen dramas on Degrassi.
Right.
it would all fit into this one little neat bubble, but now it's developed into, which is bless the tie that they're called Y series.
Yeah.
Because like
and this is a deeper conversation, but it's like fascinating to me, the people in the West that are like, I can't watch that because it's weird, because why would you want to watch teenagers or young people going through this? And I'm like, these are the same people that are really into the Vampire Diaries. Don't get me wrong, I love the Vampire Diaries, but that is fully set in high school, and then eventually they graduate to college. Or like, name any other CW show, or like, is it still called the CW? I don't know, I'm dating myself. But like,
or Euphoria. I'm sure Euphoria has been watched by many ages of people.
Yeah.
But I was telling you this recently. I listened to the One Tree Hill podcast because I loved One Tree Hill. It was filmed in North Carolina, and the three main actresses have gotten together to talk through every episode of the show, and they were talking about how the major demographic of people who watched One Tree Hill when it was on were ages 40 to 50 years old. And she's like, I get that now because all those actresses are in their 40s. And she's like, it's nice watching high schoolers go through things that I went through as a child, because I'm like, that felt like the end of the world, and now it doesn't anymore. And so you look back at that time wistfully because you're like, it's interesting to watch and entertaining because you're like, it gets better. Like, that's not the hardest thing you'll ever go through, but it's enjoyable.
And even if it is the hardest thing you ever went through, you will get through to the other side, or you can get through to the other side.
And so there's something fun and interesting for adults to watch teens and young adults go through these stories and go through these situations that we went through what feels like yesterday. Like, as a full grown adult, like one of my favorite movies is this movie called Liberal Arts, Josh Radnor, and a fun little appearance by Zac Efron, but it's Josh Radnor and Elizabeth Olsen. And there's a line in that movie where he's like, the biggest the biggest secret of adulthood is that you never feel like an adult. And it's so true, because like, I still feel like there's no way that I could have like, at the age that I am now, I could be married with children, and like, I don't want children. I can't imagine.
No tea, no shade.
As someone who gets paid to take care of children, I can't imagine. Like, this week I had to take care of a child 24/7 for 2 days, and I was like, no, never. I don't want to do that, because like, I don't feel responsible enough to be able to keep another thing alive.
I mean, listen, imposter syndrome is real, and I feel very lucky. I feel like the kids that are younger than me, who very much understand what imposter syndrome is, are so lucky, because I had no idea what that was. And I fully felt like I was faking my way through life for so long.
But I think that's what's interesting about watching these shows about people who are younger than you. And it goes back to this story, because this is one of the stories that has multiple ages of people, because you have a 20-year-old,
right? He turns 20 in the show.
Yes. And then you have what presumably is like 40-year-olds, 30, 40-year-olds.
More than 40, because she says it's been 20 years and they were already graduated from college, right? Because like, they graduated from college and got married and had the baby. Right. So we're probably 45, maybe in our 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's interesting, is that like, you kind of see every single character going through the same thing in different ways. Yeah. And so no matter what age you are, these stories are relatable, whether or not it's a BL. The point is that like, if it's two guys, if it's two girls, if it's a guy and a girl, everyone deals with these same issues and situations and relationships, whatever label you put on it, which is like the age old, like BL, the go-to BL trope now. It's like, it doesn't matter about gender.
Right.
Like,
well, and that's what's funny about like Wang's whole fight with his mom, or like when she's like, no, this is not okay, and she kind of like has a come apart.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't understand why it's so bad that I'm in love with a man, and she's like, no. First of all, she is a homophobe, but she's like, that's not the thing I'm freaking out about. The thing I'm freaking out about is that it's this guy.
Yeah.
Where like, honestly, like she's not wrong about that part. Like, and he's so, again, as like a 20-year-old who's just come out to his mom and all of this stuff, that's the only thing he can focus on.
Yeah.
Not all of the other things that are inappropriate about this relationship.
Right. Which is so indicative of so many other shows that are out right now, that they're like, where I think we're getting to in BL, where it's like, it's not the fact that you're gay, it's the fact that you're hiding all these things, or it's the fact that you're lying about something, or it's the fact that like you're covering up something. And so that's been really interesting to see about BLs, that we're getting to a point where like being gay is okay. It's the things around like your relationship that you're hiding, and that you're not being honest with people, and that like people in these worlds are like, whatever, we don't care if you're dating a guy. It's the fact that you're lying about something, or it's the fact that you're like covering up a secret, or like all these other things. And so,
to end, my very favorite line in this whole show is when Wang says,
oh no,
the reason that the Thai language is difficult is the pronouns. And Wang,
there's so much
not to
more.
be disrespectful, but that's not the reason Thai is difficult. I don't give a crap. I'll call everybody P. Doesn't matter to me. Although maybe I'm calling them a ghost. I don't know. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. Okay, I'll call anybody P. I'll use ter. I don't care. Or do you want me to use goo? Or like, but heaven forbid I use mung. No. I don't care. If I'm never allowed to call anybody mung in my whole life, that is so fine with me. I'll use coon for everyone I've ever known in my whole life. Coon. Everyone's coon. Everyone's coon.
I will say that's the blessing of being a Western fan, is that like the Thai don't expect you to call them specific pronouns, because they understand. Maybe if we spoke Thai fluently, which like we do, but we don't.
I don't care. I will call everybody coon. That's not what makes Thai difficult.
Context, y'all. It all needs context.
I literally don't care.
Wan.
Everybody is coon.
Wan.
I was watching a vlog today where this woman said Wan, and she was asking him like, do you want this sweet? It was about a coffee.
Yeah.
And I was like, that sounds like what I say. I don't get it. That sounds to me like the same word I'm saying.
It's because there's context. Here's the thing. I don't think they're actual toads in Thai. I think they're lying to us, and I think that they just use context, kind of like our where, and where, right?
Listen.
Like we have it in English, right? We're like, where are you going? Where is this thing? What are you wearing today?
Well, I mean,
within
classic,
the context,
the original joke is who's on first, right?
Right. Oh, truly.
Listen, okay, I know I said I wasn't going to say this, but we're an hour and 13 in, so I can say this. Another thing that makes Thai hard. Is your name God or is your name Tad? Because like God and Tad are spelled the same with a different first letter, but they're pronounced differently. And nobody tells you why. And nobody tells you that it should be different. And then you have to walk around your house being like, God.
Here's the funny thing.
God.
This is what you learn when you learn Korean, is that they're like, do not learn from romanization. And that's the tricky part, is that like,
except that all of they give themselves Western names,
except for the fact that God, we have learned, is
a
Thai.
northern word. Yes, it is a northern dialect word.
And so it's funny, if you go to my drama list, is that it also
it does say
it says
GAD.
Yes,
but no, it's not the G. The K and the G are difficult.
God.
It's the A. It's the
Gad.
pronunciation of the A. Is it Gad or is it like Josh Gad?
He should have said
or
God.
Like
He should have put an O
God.
in there.
God.
That feels like big God energy.
Because you have Tad from Atlas, who's spelled TAD, and he's pronounced Tad, right? Like you hear the other members of Atlas say Tad.
I'm so sorry that I'm Southern.
Tad, right? But then you have God. And like, is it God? Am I even saying that right? And I swear I have watched 200 videos of this man. 200, over 200 at this point, because I did make it through that playlist.
I love it.
I still don't know how I'm supposed to actually say his name. And then I found out recently, here's another reason the Thai language is cool. I found out recently that he has this little hashtag he uses. Okay, because he's Gad, and of course he does. And like he wants a boat on a desert island. I swear to God. He has this hashtag he uses where he gets the hashtag is basically being annoyed at people saying his name wrong.
Which is funny because that's for the Thai. So he has the Thai who say his name wrong and the English who say his name wrong. So I think
maybe
you're
just
the wrong
change your
one.
name, Gad. Maybe go by Moss. Maybe this is why your parents blessed you with the nickname of Moss. Okay.
Like you can't get Moss wrong.
You can't get Moss wrong.
This has been Let's Talk Real. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe unfollow. Let's Talk Real at Let's Talk Real.